Hello. Today is July 24th. We finally had NFL training camps kick off, and we already have injuries and holdouts to discuss. We'll break it all down here and more. Let's go.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar Alpha Play Chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally Piss Boys. You're right.
Oh,
Pat left.
there's Pat.
Oh, there he is.
I didn't leave.
Man,
That's
is taking the Kadarius Toney news hard. Travis Kelce,
Yeah.
about 5 minutes ago, Travis Kelce at camp just said, intimated that Toney's injury is so severe he might not be back until after the regular season begins, which is just
Nuh-uh. Does
hilarious.
that really happen?
Travis Kelce just said he's crossing his fingers to get Toney back as soon as possible, whether it's for the beginning of the season or a few
Oh
weeks
my
in.
God.
That's bad.
Guy made it a day of training camp, right? Rashee Rice is out there vomiting and then getting back up and saying he's having the time of his life. And Kadarius Toney apparently did something to his hamstring on doing punts, doing punt returns.
So this is Sky Moore's fault.
Well, really, it's Andy. It's
4 punts last year.
Yeah, this dude has played it so well. He tricked Toney into not getting that second touchdown. He punt returned so badly that Toney got hurt on a punt return.
Really, it's Andy Reid's fault for not just saying this is Richie James's job. Like Richie James does one thing, he's the punt returner, right? I mean that. Why is Kadarius Toney just don't even practice, dude? Just show up. Just show up to the game. Because apparently your body shuts down after about 30 minutes of physical activity. I wonder if he's doing the DK Metcalf diet, like all he eats is candy. And
you guys saw that clip. Obviously, Davis did. You saw it?
That's old.
No.
So this is a thing he's been
old,
saying.
okay.
No, the clip is new, but he's been saying this for years. He's like, all I do is eat gummy candy.
But it's not just that. He does like an 18, 19 hour fast. So he does he wakes up, he works out twice, completely fasted. Then he gets really hungry around noon. He goes and gets a big coffee. So that keeps him going until I think 6 or something. Then he breaks that fast with several bags of candy. That is.
And he says he Postmates it every day. He says he Postmates it or I guess Uber Eats it every single day. He doesn't even stop.
He's in great shape. I don't know. Maybe this is how we should all live.
I don't think that would work for me. I don't think following that diet would work for me. But realistically, if Toney is hurt, actually for training camp, he's going to be the biggest faller of the entire preseason. He's going to go from what is he wide receiver 38? Where he's going to go is in that range where you don't want to click anyone. Michael Thomas, Cortland Sutton, Jameson Williams. He's going to land right in there.
I was going to say the same thing, that right near Jameson. If he's uncertain for the start of the year, then I think he would go past Jameson Williams even maybe. It depends obviously on the news and what the injury is, but I could definitely see him dropping as far as there.
Because I like him more there with injury concern. I guess now that because part of the thing with Toney is that he's never really stayed on the field, and he's his playing time sort of uncertain. Is such a low floor that some of that floor sort of realizing itself, but then getting priced in. I think I will have more of him.
He becomes a guy you're actively taking and just accept the risk, as opposed to being a guy you only ever take with Mahomes.
Right. The risk is now, it's not that people are scared for no reason. The risk has now shown up. He's may miss time, but that's getting priced in. But it's I don't know. It sort of makes me feel the ceiling is sort of unchanged, right? He can still get healthy and be the number one there.
I think the thing that gets tough, right? Because I think part of the reason he wasn't available last year was 1, injury, but it was also 2, not having a good grasp on the playbook. I mean, clearly in the playoffs, they didn't trust him to be out there running wheel routes at wide receiver. So him missing all training camp and preseason, like I agree with you that at pick 100, I would like be taking him more than I am now. But I think the fall would be like justified because the chances of him being a legitimate wide receiver for the team, like playing 70% snaps, I think decrease a ton if he misses all of this time up in the start of the season. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's tough with guys like this because I have so little Kadarius Toney that it's like I have 1.4% and $47. So I like some of these guys that I have low on. I've tried to mix them into like one of the higher stakes teams that I'm doing. And Toney, I haven't even done that. So this is about as hard a fade. It was pretty uncomfortable fade because he does have a really high ceiling. But you know, we talked about just the playing time stuff, and you know, he also has been going near receivers that I really like. Like if he was like a late 7th round pick, I'd probably have a lot more. But he's like more like a late 6th. So then when it's like, oh, the fall is justified. Well, it's easy for me to feel like the fall is justified because I wasn't taking him where he was. But I do. I mean, I do. I will find him a lot more intriguing if it's him versus Jameson Williams.
I mean, I bet I don't have a Toney team. I have 12% on underdog, but I bet I don't have a team that does not have Mahomes or Burrow. I would guess out of like 200 plus drafts, I've got 0 Toney isolated from other Chiefs teammates because there is no there. But now I'm like, whatever, sure, be my 5th wide receiver. Like no different to me than honestly, no different than taking Sky Moore, really, where the floor is like 0 countable games. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I'm taking Sky Moore at pick 100, and I've like 0 confidence in that, but just because the cost is different, I'm doing it. So I think that's a fair point that like if Toney was there, I'm sure I'd be taking him some. Like I don't know. I'm just taking more because of the price, not because like I even really believe that he's going to break out this year. But it's just like, okay, pick 100. If I'm not taking any Chiefs wide receivers, I'll take more there. Why not?
Well, yeah, and the other thing I would say with Toney is he does strike me as a better managed league pick, where like, you know, it feels somewhat binary. Maybe now not, but like ahead of time, like I probably would have had more of him in my high stakes stuff because it's like if he is the guy, you know, you're starting him every week. Like he's either a locked and loaded starter for you, or you're sorry you picked him.
I think that's a great point comparing him to like Gabe Davis, who goes right next to him too. Like I'm not super excited about Gabe Davis in redraft, but in best ball, I'm totally fine with the price. Like I know. I think there was some Hopkins risk or like free agent risk baked in at some point with Davis, but now it's like he's getting that 90% route roll again this year. Like there's almost no way he doesn't get that again. So in best ball, that's the type of guy.
The Kincaid stuff could help him too. Like if it's like Kincaid versus Shakir and you have Gabe Davis, like give me all the Kincaid. Give me a rookie tight end learning slot receiver over an NFL slot receiver.
Yeah. Well, anyways, we had the Toney stuff. A topic we wanted to hit on today before we get into the risers and fallers was all of the holdout risk that bubbled up over the weekend. I think this is namely attributed to Barkley and Jacobs. Those are the 2 most obvious holdout risks. I'll also toss Dobbins into that group. I think that's going a little under the radar, but he's been placed on PUP. He didn't report to mandatory mini camps, and he's been frustrated about his contract. So that could be like purely just a normal PUP thing. He's banged up and isn't playing, but I am monitoring that just slightly. I don't think it's quite the same likelihood as Jacobs.
It's interesting. I wouldn't have him in this group. I don't think he's in this conversation for me. I mean, he's under a rookie contract. Like, you know, it's not the same.
Well, here's what I'll push back on that slightly. Players of his tenure are able to renegotiate their contracts in their 3rd year of the rookie deal. So he is theoretically able to do it. And B, like he can at least renegotiate a contract. Barkley and Jacobs literally have like they can't. So let me be clear. What they can do is they can get basically added sweeteners to their 1-year franchise tag, but they can't negotiate long-term deals anymore. Like, Dobbins but I mean, still can, and Jacobs and Barkley literally can't. So I do think that is kind of a notable difference that at least Dobbins has some motive to hold out, right?
Is
Yeah,
that,
but let's
is that
add
why
in the-
he's not at camp? I just assumed it was his knee still.
So I think that is the official line. So this could be me reading into the tea leaves way too much, but there was a story on ESPN late June, early July about Dobbins being upset about his contract. He had a bunch of quotes on it. He wanted to renegotiate his deal. He didn't report to mandatory minicamp for the Ravens, and now he's placed on the PUP list. I mean, he was healthy to end last year, so the injury stuff is a little weird. Anyways, I don't want to get too held up on Dobbins. I just think I'd just monitor that one because I think there's weird stuff.
No, I
going
mean
on in
Dobbins
that
is
situation.
falling. I think we should definitely talk Dobbins. I just think that to me this is I talked about this on Ship Chasing last week. I think the market is definitely trying to price in this stuff and as being pretty active in terms of the training camp reports, but I don't necessarily feel like there's a great understanding of what some of this stuff means. I forget who it was. I think Pacheco, when he first went on PUP, people legit thought he was missing 6 weeks of the season, which is hilarious since that's not even how the PUP works anymore.
Yeah, it's different.
It's different. Yeah. But I mean, there's two things. There's two reasons why that was wrong. One, there's the training camp versus regular season PUP. But then there's also the fact that the PUP used to be 6 weeks 2 or 3 years ago and now isn't even 6 weeks. So there's just kind of a little bit of, people just don't really understand the rules of, and then they're reacting and you're seeing these drops in ADP on guys. And Dobbins feels similar to me where it's I've been getting him now in the 6th round. You're seeing really big. I just saw, I was reviewing a team where I had gotten Dobbins at pick 70. You're seeing big drops on Dobbins. The idea that Dobbins is going to hold out after tearing up his knee in his 2nd season and coming back and having a pretty uninspiring return in his 3rd season, it strikes me as ludicrous. He has no leverage. He's on a rookie deal and he had one good year and it was his rookie season. What leverage
Mark
does he
Ingram,
have?
31-year-old Mark Ingram was more productive than him inside of this offense.
Yeah,
I agree. He's got no leverage.
He's got zero leverage. There's no reason to freak out about this. Now, if we start to hear stuff about the PUP and well, don't get nervous about literally the PUP because people that's what I was talking about before. People that's it triggers people and it shouldn't. But if you start to hear stuff that his knee could linger into the season, sure, but that should not be what our prior is on him because we saw him play last year at the end of the year. As far as I know, he did not have an additional surgery. It seems like they're probably just kind of working him back.
Okay, tell me,
right?
Tell me if I'm making this up, but wasn't there something he came back and then he got hurt again and it was never 100%. I'm looking at his game logs and he never played more than 50% of the snaps in any game. He
had a second surgery last year.
Yeah,
during the season,
they
he
were
had a cleanup
time-sharing
procedure
him
during the season.
They were time sharing him with someone who really sucks. Kenyon Drake, maybe. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's probably right.
Yes,
but
this is right. I'm looking at it right now. They were time sharing him with Kenyon Drake.
So with Dobbins, he was efficient down the stretch last year, and this is getting into narrative speculation. There were a lot of clips of him on long runs that looked like his long speed was not there. So that was the thing, is people saying, "Oh, Dobbins was still efficient, but maybe his short area burst and explosiveness was back, but his long speed, something was off." So anyways, I don't want to get too into Dobbins. I think maybe the other guys are more important to talk about.
I'm just not that into Dobbins, really, is what it comes down to.
I'm more into him now. I mean, if you can get him,
if I can get him in the, I was going to say, if I can get him 15 picks later, although because of that narrative street stuff Sam just mentioned, I just sort of have this vague association that his body is not healthy. And if this is not about a contract thing and he's really not good to go 48 days before the start of the season, that is concerning.
It's weird either way, right? Because I don't want to get in the business of freaking out about PUP, because I agree with you, Pat, but at least with Pacheco, that was like expected. It was like he had this surgery, had a broken hand, surgery on his shoulder. Like it makes sense why he's not out there right now. With Dobbins, it's like he finished the year last year healthy, like playing, and has all this weird contract stuff, and now is not showing up to camp or mini camps or training camp. It's like that's like more new news to me than the Pacheco one. So I kind of agree with like a slight hit to his value. I don't think it should be falling like full rounds or whatever, but it to me, it's just like there's kind of ominous vibes coming from J.K. Dobbins land right now, and I don't know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what's going on. I do think that, if we think about it, just thinking through the Dobbins thing, like what risk are we really taking on? I think the contract stuff, and this is why I said to me, it's not similar to the Jacobs Barkley thing, because the contract stuff is just like, it's really a non-issue. Like he has zero leverage to begin with. And then now we're wondering if he's healthy after 2 years after this injury. Like that's even less leverage. It's like, I was checking Jeff Zarebek to see, he's a Ravens beat. I was trying to see what he thought about the Gordon signing. And he was saying like, look, I mean, this backfield has suffered a ton of injuries. They're trying to add depth. Like it didn't really have anything to do with the holdout thing. So I think the holdout thing is like, kind of a red herring. However, there probably is some risk that we're taking on with is how healthy is he. But I guess my bet with Dobbins, I'm at 6% right now, and I do plan, I'm hopeful to get up to at least even with the field with enough 6th round discounts on him. But my hope is, or my bet there would be that he will be coming on down the stretch, right? Like if you're getting, maybe you're taking on a little bit of risk with his health, but in November, like he should be fully healthy unless there's something we're really missing here with the knee. And then also potentially you're getting a much more explosive Ravens offense, or one that's maybe equally explosive, but running more plays. So, I think in the 6th round, a lot of that is a lot of the risk is somewhat priced in, and you can handle a little bit of a slow start if that's what we get from him.
Got it. So anyways, back to the holdouts. I just wanted to go through. So I think what's important to consider with these holdouts is that holdouts have happened in the NFL for a long time. They've been less common in recent years. We've seen more hold-ins than holdouts. But the number of holdouts that actually lead to players missing games is extremely small. So this isn't comprehensive. I'm sure there's other examples out there. People in the chat can let me know, but I dug into, the number of holdouts that actually resulted in players missing games since 2000. And it's a pretty short list. There's the famous Le'Veon Bell example where he missed the whole year in 2018. Obviously, that's like the not worst outcome. And then there's a couple other examples. Melvin Gordon missed a couple weeks in 2019 when he was on the Chargers. Wayne Brown missed half the season on the Texans. Cam Chancellor missed a couple weeks in the Seahawks. If you go back to like the 80s and 90s, there's some other examples. Joey Galloway, I think, Emmitt Smith in the 80s. Anyways, the number that actually
Chris Johnson held out for a long time, right?
He did, but he never actually missed games. So
okay,
that's
right. Yeah, he's gone right before.
And again, this next list here, again, not comprehensive, but the number of holdouts that you can find resulting in players not missing games is like massive. And I don't have I wish I could tell you that it's like 2% or something. I don't have that exact number here, but the point being, like, the number of players that hold out and end up coming to camp either with a new contract or not before the season, that number is huge. The number of players where this actually leads to players missing games is really tiny. So I think overall, like, I do think the risk should be like, I get why Barkley and Jacobs are being discounted slightly, but I think ultimately back to the point of leverage, like Jacobs, speaking of no leverage, Jacobs and Barkley have nearly zero leverage because they can't actually negotiate long-term contracts at this point. That deadline is passed. All they can do is they can get something in their contract that says we won't get tagged the following year. Maybe that's what they're holding out for. I think they can get like a couple extra $1 million added to their 1-year deal this year. So there are small things they can get, but like the long-term deal is off the table for them already. So that's what I'm saying. Like, rationally, I don't see any world where these players say, okay, in my contract year, when I'm fighting for a contract in 2024, I'm going to sit out, half the season and show that signal to teams. Rationally, it makes no sense now.
Well,
they're
let's just. I think there's an important caveat here. Like they are not under contract. Both these players do not have contracts with an NFL team, and that was the case with Le'Veon Bell when he sat out. Like he didn't hold out of his existing contract, right? He just refused to sign the franchise tag. And the way the CBA works, which is, I mean, it's extremely unfair that the franchise tag exists.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're saying you have to sign this one deal. You have no right to, you are essentially a free agent, but you're not allowed to negotiate with anyone but us. And you have to sign this like predetermined contract based on how many, what people at your position get paid. So Le'Veon Bell is the second year that he was franchise tagged because he played under the franchise tag, I believe, in 2017. And then came back and got franchise tagged again, and then he sat out and refused to play under the franchise tag. Not that I think either Jacobs or Barkley would do that, but there is sort of a incentive to do that in some way where you have to be, it's not the most logical thing to do, but you could potentially say, I'm going to do what Bell did, sit out for the year and try to reach free agency without taking another year off my career by being a total workhorse. And both of these guys are total workhorses. They're going to take a lot of punishment this year, and then they're going to hit free agency. So it could be I don't see either of them doing it, but that would be the path, is that you're talking yourself into self-preservation, and I'll get my contract next year when I'm actually able to negotiate with other teams.
But I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure if they do that, their contract doesn't or whatever, their tenure in the league.
There is no contract. They don't have a contract.
Okay, they don't have a contract, but if they do what you're saying and sit out the entire year, their team still own their rights for next year. They can tag them again.
They could tag them again. Yeah, they could tag them again.
At the same, but not even at the elevated rate, at the lower rate, they can tag them again.
Yeah, but I think there's sort of but how did that go for you? Sort of. I mean, yes, you are right about that. They could just get franchise tagged again, but I think that would be unlikely, having the player just sat out. But you're right. That is another thing for them to consider, that they could just get tagged again. But that would be a potential waste of the franchise tag for 2 straight seasons for, but
who else are the Raiders going to tag? What are they going to tag?
That's a good point.
You could talk yourself. I guess I don't know the Giants roster inside and out, but you could talk themselves into using that tag on maybe someone else. But who are the Raiders? The thing is, these dudes are not missing time. They're
probably not missing time
because they're also
They just have no leverage. They don't really increase their earning potential. They don't accrue a year of service time. It's honestly what it is. It's most likely to be this group of guys specifically who eat it, and then some sort of collective bargaining acquiescence is given by the league for running backs, right? And I mean, everyone online has had ideas about this, like performance-based bonuses, touch-based bonuses, where it's paid out at, it comes out of the revenue that is earned by the players. Right. Like all kinds of people have had all these ideas. Running backs only sign 2-year contracts when they're drafted in the NFL.
I think that would be horrible for them. I literally think
they'd all end up being 7th round picks.
Half of them would be UDFAs.
Yeah. So the point is, if I had to set a line, Barkley, to me, I'd make it minus 500. He's there week 1, right? Jacobs, for whatever reason, I get the vibe that Jacobs might be a little bit more likely, just for
I do too now. And that's flipped for me. I thought Barkley was slightly more likely.
Because Barkley, there's this quote going around. Barkley was doing this podcast, right? And the quote that went around was, oh, maybe I really will have to take it here. Maybe I really will have to say, fuck my teammates, fuck my team, whatever. Yeah. But then the part of the quote that's not circulating is Barkley basically going I would never do that. I care about my teammates and stuff too much. It's not really in his nature. It sucks for these guys. I feel for them. Obviously, labor should be compensated appropriately. And if you're going to get tackled 300 times in a season and literally risk your brain health, your ability to walk properly, you should be paid a lot for that. Even if eggheads like us have said Gus Edwards can do your job just as good as you can for winning games or whatever. But there's just the way the CBA is structured. leaves them no outs. They have no outs. They're just
it's the
fucked.
franchise tag. I mean, Charles Robinson was, I think it was on Slow News Day. He was making the point that it's really just it's the franchise tag. The only way to fix this is really the franchise tag. The getting rid of it, or maybe if they
do the players even like the franchise tag, or is there? I guess does it work out for quarterbacks?
That's how it got sold, is that they were basically going to use it on quarterbacks, and that that's why it's called the franchise tag, right? It's supposed to be for franchise players, but it's a lot of times just used to keep a guy for like really cheap, and a guy whose career is potentially only have 1 or 2 more good years, and you're able to keep him cost controlled. The combination of, I mean, in some ways, Jacobs is lucky because they didn't use the 5th-year option. I mean, he could be in a situation where he's still on his rookie deal right now and likely to get franchise tagged next year if he performs well. So that's what happened to Barkley. I just think it's the 5th-year option and franchise tag combo that's so brutal for the running backs.
Barkley, the person who I really feel bad for is Saquon Barkley, who could have signed the largest running back contract in NFL history had Dave Gettleman kept his job for another year. It's really
so true.
And really the thing is it was Gettleman's poor choice to hire Joe Judge, right? Because Judge was so bad at his job that ownership just had to clean it out. But had they kept who's Jason Garrett was the coach before or whatever, and had Garrett had like a respectable 7-win season.
Joe Judge with Garrett as the OC.
Oh,
right?
that's right. Who was the coach before Judge?
Was the guy with the
there was a guy in between. There was a guy. Okay, all right. We're gonna.
Didn't our prophecy come true? By the way,
yes,
we realized that
Freddie Kitchens. We realized that Freddie Kitchens was the offensive coordinator. So there was Pat Shurmur in between. So it was Coughlin for a billion years. McAdoo gets fired mid-season. Then they hire Pat Shurmur.
McAdoo benched Eli to end his streak, and that was the end for McAdoo.
Geno Smith started that game. What a butterfly. I was at Eli Manning's last ever home game to meet Patrick Laird. What a beautiful moment. Saquon Barkley, Saquon had like 1 billion fantasy points in that game. I think he had like 35 DraftKings points. But point being, Saquon Barkley didn't really do anything wrong other than Dave Gettleman getting fired before he could give him like $100 million.
So the last thing I'll say, like a lot of people in the chat are saying, oh, either they can do what you're saying, Pat, they can sit out the entire year, try to get hit free agency next year and sign a deal, or they can sit out until I think it's like week 8 or week 12 this year, which is the minimum games they have to play in order to accrue a season. So they can do that strategy that was talked about with Bell.
So that they would get franchise tagged again, but at a higher rate.
It would force the team to franchise them at a higher level. So people are saying they can do that. One last thing on that, like, who are the GMs or who are the teams that are clamoring to sign Barkley and Jacobs after they just sat out an entire season? Like,
does that matter to you?
I think the Le'Veon Bell example is, I mean, Bell is kind of a similar age to what these guys were when they sat out a full year.
Yeah.
And he got fired like 1 month after he made that signing. I don't know. I'm just looking at the contract for running backs like this year. Like the maximum someone got per year, I think, was David Montgomery at like $8 million. Like, I don't know. Like if I'm these guys and I'm acting rationally, I'm playing this year. I'm getting my 10
Isn't the rational move to sit out as long as you can and then sign the tag? Well, why isn't it rational to?
You lose $600K per game that you do that. You lose your game checks. So you'd only be getting paid like $4 million per year instead of $10 million.
You're sitting out 60% of the year.
Isn't it week 12? I gotta check. I think it's week 12.
It's week 10. I remember from the
week
Vincent
10.
Jackson thing. Vincent Jackson sat out until week 10 and came back.
So you're sacrificing of your
different now.
Yeah, of your franchise tag of $10 million, you're sitting out 10 games at $600K per game. Then you're playing like that almost makes less sense to me than just sitting out the entire year. You're risking coming back for $4 million for the rest of the year. I don't know. Like,
although you're showcasing that you're not dust is essentially what it is. You're auditioning for a contract.
Yeah, I just think I think it's possible. Like, I'm not saying it's impossible these guys hold out, but the Le'Veon Bell stuff was so bad for financially. I do not think that was a win for him. He had the same thing where I think he was on the franchise tag and it was about the same amount of money as it is now. I think it was like 10 to 12 million. He lost all of that. He did get a new deal with some guaranteed money, but I think if he had just
got $27 million guaranteed at signing with the Jets, and missed out on $14.5 million the year before. I would say that was probably a win. By today's standards, anyway.
And he got to release that rap album in the interim, so
yeah.
Good for him.
I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it wasn't a win because he probably would have gotten after playing, but who knows? He could have
tore his Achilles. You never know, right?
Tore his Achilles, yeah.
It's impossible to know, but I don't think you can look at that and say it's a clear win for Bell. I think he easily could have played, got his $14 million, and got a similar contract from some other team. So who knows? It's impossible to say.
And it was the Jets ate it so hard on that. I think the issue for Jacobson and Barkley is what can they even get beyond this? You know what I mean? This is probably reflective of what they would make on the open market at this point in a year's time. Maybe it's not reflective of what they would make today, but in a year it probably is. So, it's just such a shitty situation. You want there to be an answer for these guys, but they're probably just going to have to suck it up and play.
Yeah.
So I've been taking Barkley. I've been pushing Barkley into the third round and trying to get him there. Or sometimes I'll take him in the late second if I feel like I'm pairing him with guys that I haven't paired him with in the past and, are kind of tougher to pair him with. And then Jacobs, I'm trying to get him in the late third. But I am taking Breece Hall over him now.
Yeah.
I think getting both these guys at a discount is good. I love Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall could easily be the key to the season. He's just he was so good last year, and that's another one where I've seen stuff where this is Twitter, so there's a bunch of dumb stuff, but it's he's running at 23 miles an hour, which is insanely fast, but talk to me when he's cutting at 100%. Okay. I'll talk, you're only going to draft him if he's cutting at 100%. If he was cutting 100%, he'd probably be the 106. So there's, you're getting a discount on that.
Yeah, I agree with those takes. I'm doing the same thing with Barkley and Jacobs. I think there's a conversation of do they actually hold out and cost themselves games this season, and there's a conversation of can this fear get worse and can you get them at better values? And I do buy that things are going to get worse for them in terms of the narrative and the news before they get better. You had the report today that Jacobs is flying away from Las Vegas somewhere. He's not reporting the team. You're going to get stuff like that. These guys are going to act as if they're not going to show up for sure. All players who are holding out, act like that. That's the point of holding out. You want the threat to be legitimate. I don't buy they're not going to play by week one or very early in the season this year. But I do think the prices will get lower. So I agree with you, Pat. I am just holding off a little bit. If Jacobs is there at the end of the third, I'm still taking him. If Barkley's there, pick 25, 26, I'm definitely clicking on him. But yeah, I guess I am letting them slide a little bit. And I'll probably take Derrick Henry over Barkley now, I guess.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Yeah,
I was already taking Pollard. So part of the thing for me, this is kind of a blessing for me because
I wasn't taking Barkley anyway.
I wasn't taking Barkley. Yeah, I'm at 3% Barkley, and I'm in a bunch of slows. I did a mass enter slow over the weekend, so my life's gonna be pretty rough for the next couple weeks. But I'm in I literally max entered the puppy slow, the Pomeranian 2, and the Pomeranian but super flex slow. So I did 250 slow drafts all at once. So I'll let you know how that goes. But so my Barkley exposure will be higher than this 3% because I am taking him at the end of the second round.
I've got 5%, but I have 21% Pollard. So you can't.
Okay, yeah.
You can't do both.
But I just felt looking at Barkley's profile, at this point, I think his receiving ability is a little bit overrated. He's still a very strong breakaway rusher. But it's
look, they got 900 slot wide receivers who are going to be running in that area of the field. Barkley might actually have to block more this year, as a pass blocker.
He's going to hold off whatever other running backs as far as receiving duties, but I don't know that he's a special receiving weapon by once you factor in the 900 slot receivers they have. So I just didn't really love him as a pick. So to get him, so it's kind of a blessing that now I can push him and take him. I'm taking Henry for sure over him. But if he gets past, like if he's in the, it's like Ramondre versus Barkley, I'll go ahead and take Barkley. Because if Barkley's playing, I have no concerns that he's getting all the work. Whereas Ramondre, I'm starting to get more nervous about that.
Yeah, the Barkley as a volume play thing is interesting because I remember when you originally published your legendary upside piece, which I think was 2 years ago at this point, right? 2021.
2020, 2020, I think was the first year I did.
Oh, 2020. Whatever the first year you did it was. I remember
it was.
Yeah, whatever it was. I think it was. Yeah, whatever.
It might have been 2021. It might have been 2021. Yeah.
I remember I applied like your criteria against some statistics, and I came to the same conclusion even back then in 2021 that like, hey, obviously Barkley's rookie year, that was insane efficiency, really talented player. Besides his rookie year, he kind of has been more of a bet on volume than on efficiency. And that's been true kind of for a while. So I do kind of buy that. At the same time, like it's such a good bet on volume. If
it's such an easy bet on volume. Yeah.
And like the long runs, he still has that in his bag.
He does that well.
Yeah. So, anyways, let's talk. Let's maybe move away from the running backs.
Just on Jacobs real quick. It's like,
yeah, go ahead.
I do think like with Jacobs too. Like I am underweight Jacobs as well, but I would like to get. I'm at 5% Jacobs, and I've done some of the higher stake stuff with him. So I'm kind of been more in on Jacobs than Barkley for sure. But like the Raiders just being like an absolute dumpster fire is also like a potential question with him, right? So I've definitely.
I mean, I'm not that worried about that in general.
Okay.
Like they're
Jimmy
G's
playing now, practicing.
They weren't that good last year, anyways. Like they were kind of like scrappy, whatever. It seems like it's going to be the same thing. Like, I don't know. You could argue that having Renfro and Jacoby Myers is better than running out like Mac Hall. There was another guy there who was like an all-time wind sprinter. I even forget his name. Demarcus Robinson. Demarcus Robinson was wind sprinting for the Raiders last year. So and
wide receiver 2 for the Rams.
And you don't have the will he won't he thing with Waller happening every single week. Like it. And look, to be honest, there's no difference between Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr. I'm sorry if you're one of those people who believes that there is. There just really, there really isn't.
There really isn't. I mean, the numbers for Jimmy G and Derek Carr aren't even close in that Jimmy G is
Jimmy G's been much better.
Yeah. Way better. Yeah.
So you can say, oh, it's all Shanahan, but you have to say that, and then you have to like regress it. Even like you gotta regress the shit out of Jimmy G to get into 2022 Derek Carr. 2022 Derek Carr was like already bad, and Jacobs and Devante smash. So that's the thing.
I think Jimmy G is definitely. I would say Carr is a better quarterback than Jimmy G. I mean, we can say that, right?
But can you say that 2022 version of Derek Carr is like better than Jimmy G?
I think Derek
Carr. Yes, I expect the Raiders to be worse this year with Jimmy G under center.
But remember, like it's so easy. It's so easy to forget these things out of being, when you're not in the inner workings of the season. But like the Raiders were not a team you ever wanted to bet on. There was stories going around, reporting going around that they wanted to fire Josh McDaniels, but the owner is too cheap. So he didn't want to pay out his guaranteed money. So they just had to keep letting him coach. Like, it's not like the
Matt Patricia joining the staff this year to
right. Like this is not a situation where Devante Adams and Josh Jacobs
to redesign the building.
Yeah, I'm with you, Davis. It's like
it doesn't matter.
There's this perception that the Raiders in 2022 were like so awesome, like Jimmy G's going to come in and ruin everything. Like last year they fucking benched Derek Carr for Jared
that's
Stidham.
Not Sam. No one's saying that's the total straw man. No one is.
Yeah, I know, but I love arguing. I love arguing
incorrect.
Against straw men.
Incorrect. This is not true. People are hardcore doing this. Derek Carr is way worse. The Raiders are going to be awful type thing. Because I tweeted this the other day about Devante Adams, about how I think he's a better pick than St. Brown and Garrett Wilson. And almost like half the replies are like, yes, this is obviously true. The guy who has been one of the 5 best receivers in fantasy for the last 5 years is still good. And then the other half of the people are like, I can't believe you would draft a guy catching passes from Jimmy Garoppolo, basically completely negating that like George Kittle has gone completely nuclear and Deebo Samuel had like the greatest efficiency season a wide receiver has ever had with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like just the Jimmy hate, like, sure, if I wanted to win games, maybe I'd rather take Carr. But the Raiders were 6-11 last year. They had a negative 23-point differential. Like they were bad, and it simply did not matter. It did not matter to Devante Adams and Josh Jacobs, and I don't think it will this year either.
Yeah, it's just like I don't love it if I'm drafting a running back that I think his team might be like, and what outs do they have to be good? So I don't know. I'm still drafting him at the end of the third for sure. I have seen like some stuff where he's fallen into the fourth, and I
would take him. I would take him if it's between Zamir Gibbs and Najee Harris and Travis Etienne or Josh Jacobs. I don't even have to think. I'm clicking that.
Yeah.
You know that line in the second Jurassic Park where he's like, if you accidentally shoot yourself with this dart, like don't do it because you're going to be dead before you even realize it. That's how fast I'm clicking Josh Jacobs over those guys. I'm immediately clicking.
When I see stuff like that, I guess what I'm saying with Jacobs is that I'm tempted to get greedy. Is really what I'm saying, because like this additional thing of like, are the Raiders going to suck so bad and all this? Because I see like the screenshots of 4th round Josh Jacobs, and I'm like, that would be nice, but the only way to get it is to pass on 3rd round Josh Jacobs, which I am taking. So I'm like, should I gamble a little bit and see if I can get some sweet 4th round Josh Jacobs? But probably not. I probably should just take the late 3rd round discount.
I think I'm just going to because I've thought about that too, Pap. And then I'm just like, what is the wide receiver that I'm taking there where I couldn't just be just as happy with the wide receiver I'll get on the way around? It's like, am I that excited about getting Amari Cooper instead of Terry McLaurin or whatever? I'm just like, I'll probably just
you'd need to do it for Lamar or
Lamar if Lamar's there,
and then got Jacobs as well or something.
You guys are Metcalf haters, so I can see you ending up with more Jacobs.
I can't. You're taking the Candyman at like 301. It makes no sense.
No. Well, the thing is I take Debo. I take Debo over Metcalf. How
do you have any?
I mean, I don't have that much, right?
Okay.
It's just like in a vacuum. I like Metcalf more than you guys. I've got 9% Metcalf and I've got 11% Debo. So I guess that's just the way it's worked out.
I have 10% Debo, but I have like 1% Metcalf. I've never seen Metcalf. I just like don't even see him because I usually take a non-wide receiver in the early 3rd round, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
Let's move on from the running backs to talk about Burks and Okonkwo. They both show up here as two of the biggest fallers. Obviously, due to the Hopkins news, Burks is down about 10 spots to pick 80. Okonkwo down in 7 spots to pick 135. To me, or I guess, Davis, starting with you, what do you think about Burks now at pick 80? Do you think this fall is justified? Are you taking him there? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's this is one of the most classic cases of volume versus efficiency stuff. Like the raw target projection for Treylon Burks inarguably went down, but his just the overall level of efficiency of the Titans offense. I mean, I don't know what is the difference between Kyle Phillips and DeAndre Hopkins worth to an offense, or Nick Westbrook-Akine versus DeAndre Hopkins. Like it's absolutely massive. I mean, there is a chance that the Titans offense actually comes close to being like league average in terms of efficiency, like yards and points per game. Not only because I think Hopkins is still pretty good, but because this is sort of something that soccer analytics has turned up over the years, which is that having the best players obviously matters, but you see a huge dip in efficiency when you have the worst player on the field. And Nick Westbrook-Akine and these guys would have been some of the worst starting wide receivers in the NFL. So
weak link systems, right? It's like which things on the NFL are you like? Offensive line, I think, is generally considered weak link. Like you don't want to have to play a terrible guy.
Yeah.
And I think receivers interesting because it's sort of both. Like superstars matter, but also
it depends on like the role. It depends on like the role they're playing. So like on the Eagles, it doesn't matter because Quez Watkins is just clearing out for those guys. But in the Titans,
he's good at what he does, at least.
He's
in
fast
the Titans
enough
offense,
to be out there.
Like fucking Chris Moore would have had to have been trying to earn targets for them to get first downs the way their offense runs, because their second tight end, they have no receiving tight ends. Every other tight end on their roster, Trevon Wesco, Kevin Rader, Alizé Mack, like all these guys are all blocking tight ends, so they have no one else who could have earned any targets. I did not have very much Burks before because of honestly, because when I was setting up like Houston, Tennessee stuff, it was because I already had Derrick Henry, and I don't think you want Henry with his teammates. Like the whole idea is that Henry just dominates the way he had, like dominates touchdowns the way he has in the past. But Chig I actually love now because Chig he's like, to me, he's an arbitrage on Burks, where it's like, sure, Burks is cheaper now, but still relatively expensive. But if the theory is the Titans offense is better, they're going to be on the field more, they're going to have more scoring drives. Chig seems like actually, because tight ends really like in the range where Chig is going, it's like if he scores 5 touchdowns, he has a bad season. But if he has 9 touchdowns, it's a good season. And 9 touchdowns feels way more likely for him now. Additionally, because the Levis risk went from like 50% to like 15%. So yeah, that's where I'm at on the Titans.
That's interesting. Pat, what are your thoughts on these guys, Burks and Okonkwo?
I lowered Burks, and he definitely looks. I think his range of outcomes is worse now, but it's tighter, right? So it's like before you had this Levis risk, which created some real low end outcomes for Burks because we're not sure how good Burks is. So you could have this combination where it's like Burks is not good, and Will Levis is his quarterback. That is a horrendous pick, at the late 6th round or mid 6th round or whatever. But you also had scenarios where he was like an alpha and playing with Ryan Tannehill for the whole year. And those are off the table now too. So I think he's on an offense that we now expect to be probably playing Tannehill for, most of the season, unless things really fall off the rails. But, he's probably not that great if things completely fall off the rails. So I just think like now we're looking at a range of outcomes that's like a bit more predictable. Some of the highs are off the table. Some of the lows are off the table. I had him as a target before, and I have him as a target now. I think kind of in the like early 7th feels fine to me when I look at it. And then once you factor in the ADP, like I want to be getting him closer to his actual ADP, more like mid to late 7th. I was also overweight him to begin with, so I'm kind of like trying to push it a little bit, try to get squeeze all the value out of the room now, having been overweight before his value dropped. So that's where I'm at on Burks. Okonkwo is sort of the opposite. I had him as overvalued before, and I have him as overvalued now, but it's just not quite as bad. But I think his projection, I think his upside without Hopkins was higher. You were looking at the potential for it to be a Falcons situation where it's 2 guys on the whole offense catching passes, and one of them's got tight end eligibility. And now,
but I never foresaw Chig as a guy who was going to earn like 105 targets, that just didn't really seem like the Titans way, like the offense was just going to be so hard to watch. It was going to be a lot of 3 and outs, all that type stuff. But like, just being, what do you think his route participation is going to be? Like, it's going to be pretty high, right? Especially because there's not really.
I don't think it'll be very high.
Okay.
So his problem, Davis, I think, is last year he was, well, this is me saying this, but I think the Titans thought he was too small to handle some of the snaps where they need him in there as a blocker. So that's why even by the end of the year last year, Jeff Swaim and Austin Hooper, those guys were still like out snapping him in a lot of games.
But the thing is there's not a Swaim or a Hooper. Like, I'm telling you, go look at their depth chart, dude. Trevon Wesco, Josh Weil, I literally don't know who that is. Kevin Rader, Thomas Odioka, Justin Rigg, Alizé Mack. Like there's not even a Jeff Swaim level guy.
But in fairness, like you could name a bunch of offensive linemen, I wouldn't know who they were. Like these dudes who block on our radar, like they're there to block.
These are all blocking guys. But the Titans have always, under Vrabel, have always had tight ends be involved as pass catchers, right?
They have, yeah. I think his upside case is kind of like a Jonnu Smith type situation where
that's literally what I'm saying is like 83 targets but 9 touchdowns.
But Smith wasn't running like all the routes, right? Well, even he was kind of a
Yeah,
Maybe
he was
maybe I'm
playing.
misremembering that, but
He had a bigger role than Chig did, I think, but he still was not.
So in
dominating routes.
2020, no, Jonnu was running all the routes. He
Was he?
had
Okay.
he had 5 games with over 86% of the snaps, and he was over
Wow.
70% in all games but 3. So he was the lead tight end in 2020, and he had 65 targets and 9 touchdowns, right? So like that's really what you're saying Chig can do.
I guess my
It's
problem
efficiency,
with,
yeah. Either way you do it, it's an efficiency play.
I guess my problem with Chig is like if I'm making the touchdown bet, and I agree that like he looks like a talented player. When he gets the ball, it's like fun to watch him in the open field. I agree he could break off some, long runs and have good TD efficiency. But if I'm purely making just like the touchdown bet on a player, I feel like there's guys that are cheaper that I can do it with. Like Gerald Everett, not a sexy name, but he's on the Chargers offense. He goes like 2 rounds later. Irv Smith's on the Bengals. I could see scenarios where he walks into 10 touchdowns, just pure luck this year.
Yeah.
Tyler Conklin with if Aaron Rodgers is going to be good.
I mean, we can play pin the tail on this year's Gary Barnage, right?
Exactly. That's why I'm thinking it's so unpredictable that like, should I have to pay up for that?
So base case is I like Chig the player. Like I think he's good. So if he's getting a little bit cheaper, but I actually think the offense is going to be better, their median expectation for like points scored, then if those are the priors, then my updated take should be I'm actually a little bit more interested in Chig now because I never thought he was going to earn that many targets.
I haven't loaded in week 18 into my spreadsheet from last year. Because why would I? But through weeks 1 through 17 last year, how many times do you think Okonkwo ran at least 60% of routes?
Probably none.
2.
0. He was at 50%, looks like 4 times. 50% or plus 4 times.
To be fair to him, though, like I bet his route participation, given that he was a rookie, is pretty strong, right? Like we don't expect rookies to run 60%.
Yeah, I mean,
to be fair,
sure, it was.
Yeah, my prior for a rookie tight end is like, was he able to get on the field at all for a coach that like hates playing rookies? And he was.
Yeah, but I don't know that. Like, I mean, this is
a size thing with him. He's small for a tight end. That's the thing. That like I think there's a legitimate reason to think he might not ever get. Like the thing that's misunderstood about tight ends, I think, is like people are like, oh, you don't want them to be good blockers. Well, they have to be good enough to be in line in 3 wide receiver sets, like to provide some plausible. Like they have to be able to do competent blocking, and like at his size and how they used him last year, there's questions if he can do that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but there's big questions if he can, I think.
Yeah, I don't like this narrative that like we don't want tight ends to block because blocking, like first of all, tight ends mostly block on running plays. It's not all that common for a tight end be blocking on passing. They will have the tight end stay in and do some additional protection.
Kevin Rader is going to be blocking on passing plays for.
Yeah, but generally, if you have a tight end out on the field on a passing play, he runs a route. It's like, your George Kittles and stuff are primarily blocking on running plays. Maybe they're chipping, maybe they're doing so that it gets a little complicated. Sometimes they do like a chip and then run a route, but I want snaps. I want these guys to be out there. And Okonkwo does profile as kind of a part-time rotational guy, which isn't my favorite archetype. By the way, if we're looking for tight ends who flash something, how many times do you think Jelani Woods had a 60% plus route rate?
3.
Twice. So, I mean,
you're just the Jelani Woods take is that he goes 3 catches, 3 yards, 3 touchdowns in week 17
in the right week. Yeah. He feels about as live to do that as Okonkwo to me. Not that I would take him over Okonkwo, but I don't know. I've just always felt like, man, we're really excited about Okonkwo when he's probably a part-time player on a not great offense.
Yeah. I mean, the case for him, I don't have the stats with me right now, but like if you look at the yards per route run, targets per route run stuff with Okonkwo, it's truly some insane stuff. And I'm fearful of like chasing that in small samples. That's how you end up with Alberto, right? But yeah, the efficiency was really, I guess I'll say this. I get why he's ranked in this order amongst tight ends. I am just very wary of chasing this tier of tight ends in drafts.
Yeah. Me too, especially on rookie efficiency numbers, he ran less than 200 routes last year. So it is like he's good. I mean, he's better than we thought, and he's probably a pretty good NFL player, but I think most likely he's a part-time player. He's a good yards after catch producer. So it's not just touchdowns. I mean, he can make plays in a way that like Trey McBride is not going to make plays like Okonkwo did.
No. Yeah, he can break tackles. If you're looking for the big play archetype, like I get it with Chig. He looks like a baller in the open field.
For sure.
Let's talk Kendre Miller. He's kind of an interesting one. He was placed not on the PUP list. We talked a lot of PUP so far, but he was placed on the non-football injury list this past week. He did have injury concerns leading up into the draft. I believe an MCL injury of sorts at TCU. So this was like somewhat expected that he'd be banged up. The non-football injury designation, I'm a little confused by that, but there hasn't been a ton of reporting, so I don't know how to act on this. Pat, I liked Kendre at sort of his price leading up to this. I've been a little scared by the injury news. How are you reacting to this?
Yeah, I've kind of had spurts with Kendre where I was pretty excited, like real early on, and then I got pretty nervous because I was thinking like he is probably going to miss some. He had been missing the minicamp stuff, and I was like wondering if maybe the market wasn't factoring that in. And then I saw some stuff where like Nick Underhill was saying like, man, Kendre could maybe just run away with this thing if like he gets out there enough. They're really excited about him and all that. And then I was like, oh, I'm back in. And now I'm kind of back out. So all throughout, yeah. Like I've been very kind of inconsistent here, but I have 10% of him. So I am overweight on him. But it does make me nervous as someone who's overweight on him, especially because now, the Kamara thing, the range of outcomes on that has also tightened. Like he's going to get suspended now, but probably for 4 to 6 games. He's not going to miss like the whole season. He's not, he pled to a misdemeanor. So felony stuff is off the table. I think that helps him just keep that suspension from like ballooning. Right. So we now look at Miller and it's like, it's harder to see kind of the, oh my God, like you had to have Miller outcomes. And it makes me a little bit more comfortable moving to other guys, given that I am overweight now.
I've got 2% of him, and that feels too high. Because there's no way that all the things that ADP are assuming to be true, like ADP is assuming Kamara is the starter when he gets back from suspension, assuming that Jamal Williams is going to have a goal line role, assuming that Taysom Hill retains his Taysom Hilly fullback, backup tight end, H-back, goal line back role to some degree. Like Kendre Miller is the guy who gets squeezed in this timeline. Now, Jamal Williams could just suck. Alvin Kamara could suck. Like there's totally paths. I don't think you're like brain dead for taking him, but just the way I'm building my portfolio where like I like Kamara a little bit more than you guys. I love Taysom. I think Jamal Williams is going to play, like Jamal Williams has kind of always played. Like, remember how much we used to hate Jamal Williams in the backfield with Aaron Jones? Like, he's just always going to kind of linger a little bit.
Yeah. There's probably going to be a TDP or an Isaiah Spiller this year. And I would say Kendre Miller's the early favorite, right?
Yes, I agree.
Probably. I mean, yeah, it's weird. I was looking at it a little bit more. Nick Underhill actually tweeted that it's not a medical issue, but technically the list he's placed on, like in definition, has to be a medical issue. So maybe what Underhill meant by that is the Saints aren't worried that it's like a long-term issue or something. Who knows? It's weird. I guess like I was having a hard time clicking him when Algier was behind him. I think Bigsby was behind him for a while. Jalen Warren, just guys I feel a lot better.
That's when I was having a hard time clicking him too.
Yeah,
he is getting into a range where I feel more comfortable taking him now for sure.
Yeah, like I've seen him fall to like the 160s now with this stuff, and I've been like, sure, I'll take him there. I mean, he was an early 3rd round pick, so I like that about him. But yeah, it's a weird situation.
But like Bigsby, it's tough because like you can dream on Miller more, so I get why he was going ahead especially with the Kamara stuff really up in the air. And you can dream that, like, look, he's just the best guy right away. Jamal Williams is like, really? Like, we're scared of Jamal Williams? Like, if Miller's good, like, you don't have to worry about Williams that bad. And then, you know, Kamara comes back from a long suspension and it's kind of dusty, and it's just like Miller-cism the whole year. But that feels pretty thin now. And then on the other hand, Tank Bigsby, like, I've only seen positive stuff about him, and he's getting talked up a little bit as a receiver, which isn't really his profile. I mean, he's a competent receiver, but that's, you know, he could be like a committee back all season, and there is no number 3 on that roster. So he's going to be like, he has to suck not to play like a fair amount. And that gives him contingent value as well. So Bigsby, I think, easily over Kendre now.
Yeah. And if you want to talk someone even later, also a 3rd round pick, Tyjae Spears goes like 4 rounds later. And I get it. Like Tyjae Spears has no chance to overtake Henry in a way that Kendre could overtake the other guys. I get that part of it, but he looks like a very locked in clear number 2 as well, given his draft capital, given the Haskins off the field stuff. I mean, look at the Tennessee depth chart and tell me who's going to play there over Spears. So he's one.
And in a role that they've carved out that passing back role with Dontrell Hilliard, who is no longer on the team. So, you know, I think he could have a little bit of standalone value in a best ball sense. You never know when to start him, but a little bit of standalone value, even if Henry is healthy.
Yeah, agreed. Let's move on to the risers here quickly. So the largest risers over the past week in ADP, Sky Moore's up at the top again.
I don't really get
Hey, did
it.
anyone pick him as a riser on this show?
Wait until buddy.
I think I forgot to record it that week.
Wait until Richie James is a 14th round pick. He is pretty high. He moves up. Every Chiefs beat writer and every Chiefs receiver, they're all saying, like, the beat writers are saying he's killing it, and the other receivers are like, Richie James is a baller. Like Sky Moore and Rashee Rice were talking to the reporters, and they were like, Richie James is fucking lit, dude. He's making the team. And if Toney is injured and not ready, I would make it even money that Richie James is on the active roster week 1 if Toney's injured.
Yeah, I mean, that almost feels light because wouldn't he be the punt returner if Toney's injured?
Well, I think he's the punt returner anyways. That's been this my take this whole time has been he backdoors his way to the active roster the same way Pacheco did over Ronald Jones last year, which is that he plays on special teams because not only
Pacheco can return too, right?
He's the kick returner.
I don't think you want your starting running back week 1 when your backups.
No, fair. I'm just saying that's how he. Yeah. I agree. I'm just saying that's kind of how he snuck on last year. Is that what your point was?
But not punt return. Yes. I think it was a kick return.
Yes, he was the kick returner. And I never in my life can watch Sky Moore return another punt. Like if he had to have been the worst almost in NFL history at it. I mean, he was so bad. I think he muffed 4 on like 16 attempts. Like it was untenable.
It wasn't good.
It's so the risers. We already talked a lot about Tennessee. I mean, do we need to say anything more about Tennessee?
I think we skipped the Tennessee guys. I am interested in Zamir White. He's a guy. I know we talked Jacobs. We didn't talk the backups in Las Vegas. I guess starting with you, Davis. Like I get the thesis with White, but he was healthy scratched all of last year's pretty much.
I mean, it's about as McDaniels as it gets, where he would just rather play Amir Abdullah and Brandon Bolden, right? I mean, he really rather would. Now,
but how confident can we be that he's going to play, like, be the number 2 to Jacobs if Jacobs?
I am not as confident as other drafters that he's for sure ahead of Austin Walter and Britton Brown. I'm really not. I mean, he probably is, like, on the balance of probability, but I don't think this is a case of a Dalvin Cook to Alexander Madison thing where they're like, okay, you're just going to play Dalvin Cook's role. Like Brandon Bolden and Amir Abdullah, just call them the inconvenient truth, right? The actual inconvenient truth, not Travis Homer. Like this dude, like Bolden and Abdullah were playing last year on third downs a little bit anyways, even while Jacobs was doing his thing. So that's probably going to happen again, I would imagine.
Yeah, this has kind of been a point of emphasis for me as I've looked at stuff. I don't want to be taking the Zamir Whites of the world based on the fantasy community's assessment of the situation, right? Like that's the type of play that I want to do less of. If we have reports that Zamir White's ready to go, he's quote ready to go as the early down back if Jacobs doesn't show up, like, all right, if he's the clear number 2, he looks great. He's repping with the ones. He's clearly ahead. I will take Zamir White, but I want
take him in the 14th round. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Take him in the 14th round with information that he's actually got a role, as opposed to because there is opportunity cost. You can take a third quarterback to help you advance. You can take many tight ends who will score points for you in the last round. You can take there's solid veteran. They're not great. I've tweeted about some of them. You're not going to be super psyched about the receivers, but they have roles. And then there's also rookie wide receivers who I think are pretty interesting, who we expect to be out there on the field at least at the end of the season. So there's, I think, somewhat significant underrated opportunity cost in trying to predict these backfields where we don't have a ton to go on. The other thing is that if Jacobs doesn't sign, they're not signing someone. They're not signing Kareem Hunt. I just don't.
They're signing even like a Kenyon Drake type. They'll sign someone like that.
Yeah, exact. Kenyon Drake. That's a great name. I mean, he's been with the team before. So I just don't want to be making this play without information.
Yeah, so I agree with you, and I did a little thread on the difference between redraft and best ball, and I think Zamir White is an awesome example where if I had to draft a redraft team right now, I might take Zamir White in like the 12th or 13th, and I'd be totally fine with it because
I'm doing my first FFPC main event slow right now, and we'll probably take multiple guys like Zamir White.
Exactly, because you cut your 12th round picks all the time. Like maybe 12th is aggressive, but you get the point, right? Like I'd take him super aggressively in redraft because if he doesn't have a role, you know what? I've cut a 12th round pick after week 1 all the time. Like it also all the time.
If you start Devante Parker or Robert Woods or any of these other dust ball, I'd pick those two because Sam's touted Parker and I've touted Woods. But those guys are not dudes you want in your starting lineup in a managed league, ever. I mean, maybe in your worst bye week situation.
Yeah.
But you can go find that bye week fill in that week. You want to be swinging for the fences. And the opportunity cost is much lower in some ways because the floor of what you need is a lot higher. That one random spike week doesn't get in your lineup because you're never going to have them in the first place. So, yeah, swing for the fences when you can use the waiver wire to your advantage that way.
Yeah, and I agree with it. Like people in the chat are saying some builds make sense to take Zamir with the last pick. I don't. Yeah, sure. I'm not saying never take him, but this is not the type of guy I want to be overexposed to. Zero RB build. I feel like I need a home run swing in the 18th round.
Sure.
Yes. Sure.
I'm also structuring my teams. I'm structuring my teams a little bit more with the idea that I don't want to be needing that back. So I'm prioritizing my RB4, my RB5 a little bit more. Like if I'm building 2-5-9-2. I'm trying to have that RB5 be someone who I'm pretty confident has a job.
Yeah. Another one I want to bring up here, not highlighted, but Leonard Fournette is kind of a funny one. I think he's up purely because there was reports that he's still out there looking for jobs. I guess he was visiting with New England, and that got some buzz. So that sent his ADP up 10 spots, basically just with the idea that he is looking to play football. So to me, that's just a signal of wherever he signs. And we've seen this with DeAndre Hopkins. Even if it's a bad landing spot, people rise because of the certainty, which makes sense to some extent, but I think is irrational to some extent.
Well, so. I started taking him higher because I think if he signs with New England, they're going to give him the ball a lot. I am fearing for Ramondre if they sign Leonard Fournette. That is the nut worst guy. Because Fournette can do both things. He can do goal line stuff and third down stuff, and his coaches have deployed him that way in the past. So, I mean, I would take Fournette in the 10th round, I think, if he signed with the Patriots. He would be an extremely good pick.
Pick 130, pick 120, something like that. That's the thing. I don't see many worlds where he doesn't rise there. Maybe someone can find a really weird landing spot that I'm not thinking of, but he's gonna rise. And maybe you can say I don't care about CLV value. Like I don't want any Leonard Fournette this year. If that's your stance, fine. I don't agree with it, but I get it. Like if you want any exposure to him, like I don't get why you're not just loading up now. Like
and look, like you don't have to. Like you can go overweight Leonard Fournette in a season in which you are underweight Leonard Fournette. You know what I mean? It is still July. You could be overweight, and I am. I have 20% Leonard Fournette. So I'm just this is me talking myself off the ledge here. I've taken Leonard Fournette 20% of the time and on some of my higher stake stuff. So I would really like for Leonard Fournette to sign somewhere soon, jump up in ADP value. It's, I'm doing enough drafts where it's plausible that I have like 7.5% Leonard Fournette in my overall portfolio if I can get enough August drafts in. But I have him at a really good price. So I think that's one of the things about closing line value to think through is like, if you don't got to go to 20% like I did, but if you're at 13%, 14%, you feel uncomfortable with that, you just need the play to hit. And then you don't have to take him once in the 10th round, which is it's going to feel pretty sweet to just pass on him constantly if he goes to the 10th round.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. And you can do that approach pre-draft too. Like I think Nico Collins, like Alan Lazard, these are examples of guys that were going in like the 160s pre-draft that we were hammering. And it's the same thing we talked about. Like I am fine being overexposed to Alan Lazard at pick 160 before the NFL draft and taking just absolutely zero of him now. Like that I think is a viable strategy, because if he does have the weird season with Rodgers where he lucks into 10 touchdowns and 900 yards or whatever, and you needed him 1 week, like I'll have some of him. So
yes.
Anyways, that's it. It's a good point. Anybody else on this list that you guys want to talk through? I think we should talk about Chubb actually.
It feels like a structural thing with Chubb. Like it's nothing about him. It's just that people are feeling uncertain about the guys around him. Yeah. Like people
the
are
other running backs, you mean?
Yes. Yeah. They're like, well, Barkley, whatever, Jacobs, whatever. And also I've noticed people doing this, like they don't care about the difference at all between CD, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Devante Adams when they're picking at that turn. They're like, I don't care which one of those guys I get. So let me take Chubb and I'll just take whichever wide receiver remains.
It is tough to decide between that group. And then you also have the situation where if you're at the 12 spot, you're probably not getting Jacobs, even with his fall, Breece is off the board. So you're looking potentially at like a Keenan Allen, Debo, or maybe you go Gibbs, but you're kind of you're solidly in that next tier of receivers, but the running back tier has also hit. So you could easily go 4 straight wide receivers out of the gate, out of that spot. Sometimes I like that spot because I feel like I just like miss zero running back, and I don't do it very, very often from any other spot. But if you're not trying to do zero running back, then taking Chubb helps you avoid, a 4 straight wide receiver start.
Yeah. What do you think about Chubb, Pat, in in terms of the legendary upside screener? Because he's a really interesting one from that lens where, he's never really had a full workload. He's never really caught passes, but he's just so efficient. And I think there's a potential. I'm not saying this is projected or likely, but Deshaun Watson has been on, top 5 NFL scoring offenses before. Like there's a chance he's this amazing player on a really good offense, right? In a place where he has no backup. So I don't know. I've struggled with that. Like, what do you think, like in half PPR about Chubb's upside at the 1-2 turn?
I mean, if you're looking for like the legendary outcome, Chubb really isn't your guy. I mean, he's had so few receptions. He's a lot closer to Derrick Henry and Kenneth Walker than he is, even to guys like Josh Jacobs or like Breece Hall. Like Breece Hall, I think is like showed meaningfully more kind of receiving upside than Chubb has shown for a long time. However, Hunt is gone, so So you kind of have to you really have to squint to see it with Chubb. Like he needs to get used in the receiving game.
I don't care. Pollard is scoring more points than him. I just don't care.
The other thing about Chubb is that he's 27 years old, and I think he turns 28 in December. So you have this sneaky age risk with him. He had a devastating knee injury in college. And we're betting on hyper efficiency in the run game, and so that I think it's concerning because we know that if these guys lose a little bit, they lose a lot the way this works. And so if Chubb just isn't the absolute clear best rusher in the NFL anymore, that's a major hit to his upside because he doesn't really catch passes. The issue that I've had with Chubb is but maybe he just catches more passes. And my God, he's an efficient rusher. And I generally like betting on this offense. The offensive line is awesome. And yeah, the offense could be really good. And then he catches 3 balls a game. And all of a sudden, he looks like a pretty nice bet in the second round. It's just kind of his baseline thing. I've had trouble getting on board, especially because I have to do all that squinting, and then he basically projects as well as Jonathan Taylor projects, because Taylor is just as efficient as a rusher at his peak and actually in his physical prime. So I'm if I'm squinting to get him to Taylor, and then he's going ahead of Taylor, it's just been tough for me. I've taken in these slow drafts, I've decided to capitulate and take some more Chubb and do some fun stuff where I take Garrett Wilson and Chubb and try to just get him up a little bit.
I've been going even weirder, and I've been taking Devante Adams with that first pick, whether it be 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever, and then taking Pollard, because that is a combo where I don't think I'm giving up that much in projection, but I'm making up a shit ton of it in uniqueness.
That's pretty interesting. I might actually start doing that. So
yeah, I do kind of think it's a flat tier from, I don't know, wherever you want to drop
after Kelsey goes. For me, after Kelsey, I really don't think there is that much, not even over the season, but any given week we're playing DFS, right? How many weeks are Diggs, AJ Brown, Lamb, Wilson, St. Brown, and Adams going to be projected more than a point apart? Not that often, I don't think.
Yeah, I see your point. I think it's similar.
Depends how Adams it depends how the Raiders are doing, because I could see Adams projected pretty consistently highly, as long as
that's what I was going to say. I could see his projection being higher
week
than
one
all those
DFS.
Guys.
Week one DFS, sure. Devante Adams is 7,800 on DraftKings. He's going to be 24% owned or whatever.
Yeah, man. Devante
he just scores fantasy points. Guy
he scores fucking points.
Yeah.
He had 180 targets last year. It's just all those other guys had 140, Amon-Ra, Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown. 180 is a lot more than 140.
I like AJ Brown a lot. I feel like he's been getting disrespected. I mean, the dude can if one of those guys puts up 40 points this year, I think AJ Brown is a pretty strong bet for that. Adams also a strong bet for that. But
yeah, they're both good. It's I agree.
But Taylor to me, I still want to be overweight Taylor in a big way. I'm at 16% on him. Chubb, I'm at 4%, and that's where I was I don't want to finish there. I would like to be. I'm probably gonna have to be slightly underweight on Chubb because I just don't like this price, but I'm going to capitulate in some of these smaller tournaments and try to get closer to even with the field. Because what if he catches passes and the Browns are good? It is a pretty simple, it is a pretty clean best ball upside case.
I am so thrown off by the Jets and the Browns because I know the total for that week 17 game is going to be 32. It's going to be I know that's irrational.
Is that a weather thing? Why do you feel so confident?
That's a good segue because we actually have implied totals for these games via Jack Miller. He did these a couple weeks ago, so a couple caveats. I'm not sure DeAndre Hopkins signing is baked into Tennessee Houston, but he was able to pull these together, blanking on how he did this or from what betting site, but these are implied week 17 totals. So Jets Cleveland is kind of right in the middle. Dave, not saying that what you're saying isn't possible. It could be a bad weather game that could tank this, but right now the implied total is 43 for that game, which kind of sits right
And there's something about that stadium that causes the wind to be worse there. That was like remember Watson came back and then he was immediately in all these games where it was like 40 miles. Remember that Saints Browns game, that the 1 week that the weather was crazy, and it was like, are they even going to attempt forward passes in this game?
I do
like it was
remember
like
that one, yeah.
it was like never on red zone. And it's like, just imagine you get I guess maybe Chubb projects well in that game, but like imagine you set up like a Garrett Wilson Chubb and Aaron Rodgers is just on the sideline, like his hands are in the warmer and he's like, I can't do anything. What do you want from me? He's just bitching at everyone, waiting for Alan Lazar to try and bail him out.
So yeah, my feeling on this, we had Chris Allen on Ship Chasing a couple weeks ago, and we're kind of asking him about the idea of trying to fade any of these weather games, and he was saying like we are looking at kind of outlier events. That it's not like I believe I said, what if there's like 12-mile-an-hour winds and it's 20 degrees? Are you in this game? Are you nervous about that? And he was like, not at all. So we are looking for like very windy, very, very cold, or a lot of precipitation of some kind. So it's like, what are the chances that we get some outlier weather event in this specific game? I think there might be something to saying like, I'm going to bump guys up in dome games because I know nothing can happen to them.
Well, it's not that I'm worried about. It's not what I'm handicapping is that of all these outdoor games, it seems the most likely. It's this specific stadium because of its proximity to that big lake and just how it's built. It seems like one of the most likely. The other one is Rams Giants, most likely to get one of these very bizarre weather outcomes.
But the other thing that I would say about this game is you are saying this, and I've heard this from people on Twitter and people in the chats of podcasts and stuff. So this is kind of out there. And if it's out there, then I don't care. Right? Like if it's baked in, if I'm going to have a chance to get this game at slightly lower, people who are stacking up week 17, which is not everyone, right? We're still getting pushback on the very idea we should even do this. Okay. So there's not that many people that are stacking week 17 in a real way. If they're less likely to stack this game, then I think that's the discount I need on this game. And I'm just gonna treat it like any other game personally.
Let me throw one other thing out there, and someone brought this up in the chat, and I've been thinking about it. I think what really matters more than weather is Thursday night. This game is on Thursday night, and I think there actually is
I didn't even think about that.
Legit evidence that shows Thursday night games have lower scoring than other games. So
that actually does concern me a little bit.
That's for sure true.
Yeah. And I don't know. Like, to me, I wonder if that sample's biased because I feel like it's always like Jags, Titans, and
right. It's always terrible games.
Yeah, it's always terrible games. So I don't know if that has something to do with it, but that's the one where like that makes sense to me. Like shorter rest time before a game could 100% impact offensive game planning, whatever. So that I'm a little bit more worried about. But anyways, let's talk through this chart a little bit. I do think it's kind of interesting. And looking at these, so these are week 17 game stack prices. The gray bar here, you can think of it as sort of an average of the top 10 players by ADP in each of the games. So far left-hand side, you have Kansas City and Cincinnati. Has the highest over-under of 49. It's also the most expensive game, so that makes sense. Far right-hand side, you got New Orleans and Tampa Bay. That has the lowest implied over-under and is the cheapest game. So directionally accurate chart. I do think there's some interesting things that jump out here. Back to dome games, Las Vegas, Indianapolis.
How directionally accurate is it? Has anyone looked at this? Like how accurate the implied week 17 game totals have been the last? Because we could backtest this, right? That'd be interesting.
Yeah, we need someone who's even more of a sicko than me to backtest it because I'm certainly not doing that. But somebody in the chat.
My following tab is just tweets of you, Sam. So I feel like you could find the time.
Dude, I'll do 20 tweets about Travis Homer, but I will not backtest whether week 17
I will not do something actionable.
But anyways, Las Vegas, Indianapolis stood out to me as like, that looks like a pretty interesting game in a dome. One of the cheaper games you can get exposure to, pretty high over under of 42. Thoughts thoughts from either of you guys on stacking up that game? Because I've been leaning there a lot in my drafts.
Which game?
Sorry, Las Vegas, Indianapolis. The third cheapest.
It's probably my number one most stacked game. Dallas.
I have that quite a bit.
Yeah, Dallas, Detroit, and Indianapolis, Las Vegas. Probably my two number one most stacked games.
It's really easy, like it just cooperates. You can always tack on like Jacoby,
Renfro,
Hunter
or
Renfro's
Alec
really
Pierce.
cheap.
You can take
Michael
Downs in the
Mayer's
18th.
free.
Yeah, you can take all these guys are free.
It's free. Yeah, it's so easy. You can build little minis around that. I think that's a real easy one.
And it's got this deceivingly low total right now, But if Anthony Richardson is good and the Raiders are like, I don't know, still drawing live for the second wild card or something at that time, like what's that? If Richardson is good, if I don't even tell you the part about the Raiders, but Richardson, the Colts are not total losers. They're relatively competitive. Richardson isn't throwing 2 picks a game. Like, what do you think that total is going to be? It's going to be like 48.
Yeah, and also like it's not that low. Like all these are kind of low. It's the same total as the LAC Denver one. Like
yeah.
So it's low relative to like what the average total will be for week 17 when we're looking at the Saturday, the day before. But like compared to these, it's not really that low.
Yeah. Downs is a guy that I like. I think getting late. Speaking of avoiding dead
Downs and Hyatt, now that you can get them in the 18th round, both feel like really good picks.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine a third round. I guess it has happened. Like Danny Gray was drafted in the third round, never got a chance to do anything. But most third round wide receivers will get a chance at some point.
RIP.
Yeah. He at least got a chance, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably fair. He did have a chance. He just didn't do anything.
The thing is we're gonna keep chasing these lower draft capital wide receivers because of Amon-Ra St. Brown in 2021. Like, you got to keep doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't mention Mike Wilson though. Don't mention Mike Wilson. Davis will get real tilted.
That guy's it's not even real. It's Dortch-ism. If we want to, I mean, the people are waiting for our Cole Beasley Giants third wide receiver breakdown. But I was doing some research because there's this tweet going around that actually it's even a worse sign for Kadarius Toney that they were even using him on punt returns because that means they don't view him as a full-time player on offense. So I was just doing some looking around and seeing like what full-time players have been punt returners. It actually is more common than you think. Like the tweet sounds good, but it happens a good bit. Like Brandon Ayuk, for example, in 2021.
Didn't Tyreek do some returning?
Not in a long time.
Not in a long time, but
Julian Edelman and Wes Welker, I think.
CeeDee Lamb 2 seasons ago had like 130 targets and 35 punt returns. Like
that's crazy.
Teams do this. They do it more for. I mean, like some teams have a specialist, but it like I would say probably about 5 guys a year, based on my very quick research, are a combination of 70% snap share on offense and punt returns. Like it's not insane. It's actually more likely for the kick returner to be the random 48th guy active on game day than it is for the punt returner to be a random guy. And if you think about it, anyways, that was a long.
Antonio Brown, the chat is pointing out.
Antonio Brown, great example. But this was a long way to say Greg Dortch was Arizona's punt returner last year. So if it's down to Michael Wilson, yes, Robert Woods was returning punts. Kevin Tompkins got that one right. But Greg Dortch was the punt returner. So if it comes down to 5th or 6th wide receiver for Arizona and they're trying to make someone active, my guess would be Dortch.
I forgot this was a Greg Dortch point. It took so long that I forgot.
I'd also forgotten.
It took a long time to get
completely forgotten.
But the point being, Greg Dortch, specifically on DraftKings, I think he's worse on underdog because his value is all tied in like actually catching short passes. But I actually, unironically, think Greg Dortch is a really good pick on DraftKings.
Yeah, he's more likely to be active on game days than Roschon Johnson. That's for sure.
Are you not taking Roschon Johnson because Travis Homer signed a $2 million deal?
He's a Travis Homer truther.
Are you trolling with this, or what is?
No.
What are you doing? What are you actually doing differently because of your tweets about Travis Homer? Or are we just having to sit through you finding his contract?
It should be. I guess this.
It's
should
mostly
be,
just
should
like
be a Donta Foreman take, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, here's the real take. So the Bears, pretty much no teams have 5 backs, including fullbacks, active on game days. Like, people say it's theoretically possible. When I ask for examples of it actually happening, it's like, it's very rare. It's a really weird way to allocate positions on your roster.
No one has 5 active running backs. Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad we agree on that, because people on Twitter are telling me that that's going to happen with the Bears this year. Guys, that's not going to happen. So the Bears have a fullback that gave $2 million guaranteed to Kari Blazingame. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. They also gave.
He went to Vanderbilt. Dave loves him.
Sorry.
Blazingame is pretty sweet though.
That sounds way cooler. But anyways, they gave him $2 million guaranteed. He played 20% snaps last year in like goal line, short yardage. Like, he has a locked in role in the roster. Why would they pay a fullback $2 million? That's not going to play. Travis Homer, people hate to hear it. They gave him $2 million guaranteed for special teams. He could if he absolutely sucks in camp, I guess he could be inactive. But are they paying him $2 million to not play special teams? Also, like, people pretend he's a complete zero. Like, look at the early season last year. Obviously, it's when Walker was a rookie and getting ramped up, but he was playing plenty of snaps in Seattle before he got hurt. Like, he plays running back snaps as well. So if he's
Dario Akumbawale, though. I mean, he's a snap eater. He's worthless.
This is the Dario Ogunbowale was the special teams captain, so you can't draft Ronald Jones takes.
Exactly. So I'm not saying draft Travis Homer. He's like some huge threat to carve out a big workload, but he's gonna be active on game days. Like, I'm quite certain in that. So then you have 2 active spots on the roster between Foreman, Herbert, and Roschon. And I don't think the market is really. And I think like Herbert, I'm kind of locking Herbert into one of those 3 from how well
I think that's fair.
So then one of like. It doesn't Foreman have a good chance of beating out Roschon for like, if they want like a goal line back and they already have Homer as like the pass catching guy in a pinch. I just think Roschon like has a pretty good chance of being inactive on game days. I'm not sure why I have to pay a 13-round pick when I can get Tajay Spears like multiple rounds later. He's going to be active on game days. I can get, other guys later that are way more locked in. Like, I just don't get the.
I feel like Yeah, but the take is, so you're not taking Roschon Johnson. Is that your actionable takeaway, that you're just not really taking him?
I'm not taking him. I have like 3 or 4%.
Okay.
But he has fallen. Like, this is not like I would never take him. This is like, I'm not taking him in the 12th, 13th round. Like, I think there's big opportunity cost there.
You can get him cheap, right? Because on Underdog, it goes Herbert, Roschon, Foreman. But on DraftKings, it goes Herbert, Foreman, Roschon. So I would recommend, if you're trying to get your overall portfolio, I'd recommend on DraftKings, you can get more Roschon. And he's a better fit for that format, because I think the way Roschon pays off like immediately is that he does earn kind of that third down back role. I guess I would also say like Roschon could probably play on special teams. Like, Travis Homer doesn't really strike me as like all that big of a threat. I mean, $2 million isn't that much money. Like, did
Roschon play special teams in college? I assume he did.
I think he did. He's also an awesome pass blocker. The other thing I would say about Roschon is, so far, and I'm not a big Roschon guy as a prospect. Mostly it's kind of, I just got on the bandwagon that Davis started of him as a pass blocker. That kind of got me like to open my third eye a little bit on him. And, he could, I think the news coming out of training camp that I've seen has been very positive on Roschon. And I'm hearing a lot of like, the Bears really like Roschon. They really like Roschon. The upside that he provides you, I think, is he takes over the backfield. He takes over the backfield by the end of the season. And so that's what I've been trying to. So I'm at 9% on him. I'm not like hammering him, but like, it's an uncertain backfield. He does do something better than the other guys, and then he's a really good pass blocker. He only has to beat out Travis Homer, who we all think stinks, to get on the field is in those pass blocking type snaps or receiving type snaps, third down role. And he's more suited to that than your typical rookie running back because he's such a good pass blocker. So I just think he kind of offers you this, like, whereas Foreman, right? Foreman is going to be an early down guy in a committee, even if he hits. He's going to split time. Herbert, I think the same thing about, although I do like Herbert. I draft Herbert. I draft Foreman. But Roschon is the guy that could just be like, nope, it's mine. This is my backfield. I'm the 65% of the snaps guy because you trust me on third downs and I'm performing well on early downs.
Yeah. Look, I don't like think that's implausible, and like I think it's hard to sometimes have these takes because I don't think what you're saying is impossible, Pat. I guess my point is just like he's a 4th round rookie running back. I looked into this over the last like 5 years. About half those guys like fail to reach. I think I set the threshold as like 60 touches in a season. Like half of 4th round running backs just like get redshirted and don't play. And the market in this very like, I get crowded is a weird word because I agree. It's a lot of like Jags, like not super talented guys, but it is crowded in the sense of like, it's kind of hard for a rookie 4th round running back to be active on game days on this roster. So you have to pay like more than Spears for this. You have to pay more than Singletary, Jerome Ford, like these guys that I just think like are going to be playing and like kind of clearly at least the number 2 on their teams. And I'm just like, I don't know. It feels expensive to me, but I get it. Like,
I guess I'm just not. So it's 1.75 for Homer and he stinks. If Roschon's really good, like I just don't see that maybe for week 1, you know,
or maybe
that's
not
the
even
other thing,
really,
right? Like
maybe not even really good, but just like a similar level of quality. You know, teams make $1.7 million guys game day inactives all the time.
That's kind of a lot for. It is kind of a lot for a running back though. Like
I mean, that's what Ronald Jones made last year to be. Did he ever play? I guess he did for like 2 games.
Yeah.
When Clyde got hurt.
Yeah. The other thing is that free agency is before the draft. So their plan may have been to have him as, you know, their 3rd down guy and active every single week on special teams and perfect fit with the Foreman signing. And now they have this 3-guy backfield that works really well, complements itself or whatever. But then they like Roschon, and then Roschon surprises them with how good he is. And it's all been positive on Roschon. Like, I just would say, you know, in an uncertain backfield, if you have a rookie who seems to be making a good impression, that getting hung up on Travis Homer's 1.75 million guaranteed, it strikes me as just sort of like it's irrelevant to the upside case. It's not that it couldn't have an impact, but it's just not going to matter if he's really good. It just isn't.
I don't think I agree with you. It's not relevant to the upside case, but I think it's quite relevant to the downside case. And I just think like, you know, 13th round pick, like, man, I can get like wide receivers that I know are playing like in wide receivers, like 2 wide receiver sets all year at that price. I can get Alec Pierce. I can get guaranteed like starting tight ends. Like maybe it's more of a structural thing where I'm just not usually selecting running backs this late in my builds, or if I am, I'm leaning towards like a free agent like Fournette even later. But I don't know, 13th round pick to me, like, have we ever drafted a 4th round running back like this high besides like Algier last year? Like
Michael Carter.
Yeah. There are examples. It still strikes me as high for a 4th round. Like it's a day 3 pick. I don't know. But I'm open. Like the reporting has been good on him. I agree with that. Like I'm
but you're right. I mean, if we're looking at another TDP or Isaiah Spiller,
that's what I'm saying. Like
he definitely has that risk. Yeah.
Like Zamir White, even Ramondre barely played his rookie year, though he did have some pockets of fantasy relevancy. There's so many rookie 4th round picks that just like are irrelevant in fantasy, and it's making a lot of assumptions for Roschon, but
it is. But I think the pure upside case is pretty juicy, you know. So I would have a hard time being like underweight in a meaningful way on him, because it's like it's just one of those ones you look back on, you're like, really, we were worried about Khalil Herbert, like who hasn't really done anything in a big sample. He's had a couple of good small sample size flashes, a journeyman running back in Deontay Foreman, who we really like, but keeps getting like, he was great on the Titans. Titans are done. He was great for the Panthers. Panthers are done, you know? And then they draft this guy and talk highly about him all offseason, and then he's really good. Like, why did that surprise us?
And to be clear, whatever team drafted him would have had to have really seen something sort of on tape or at workouts or whatever, because this is a guy who did not really touch the ball in college, you know? Like he was in a backfield with the running back who went, what did he go, 8th overall or something? right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Like, I actually don't even know the answer to this question. How many touches did Roschon Johnson have in college? I'm gonna guess it's less.
I think
than
he had a lot
200
as a
total.
rookie.
He
before
did. He
Bijan
did.
came.
I actually remember this because
I mean, not a freshman. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so he had to convert from quarterback because Keontae Ingram got hurt. So that was the starting running back, and Keontae Ingram got hurt, and the coaches were basically like, "Look, you can play if you convert right now." And that was when Sam Ehlinger was the quarterback, and Ehlinger was like a big deal for Texas, so he probably never would have been able to play. Yeah, he had 392, but 150 of those touches came as a freshman before Bijan was there. But still, he scored 6.5 touchdowns per year in the back. I guess he played a little bit, like not a ton.
To be clear, by the way, I have more Herbert and Foreman than I do Roschon. But I'm overweight on all three. And that is how I want to play that.
I think I for sure, my guess is I have almost no Herbert. I've got 2% Herbert. I've got 11% Roschon and 1% Foreman. Yeah, Roschon is the guy I like. I feel good about that bet.
Yeah,
Foreman to me seems the guy who's easy. He makes more money, but he seems the easiest to excise because he does the least of all these guys. He's not going to play on passing downs, and he's not going to play on special teams. So what is the point?
Why aren't you taking Herbert?
Legit.
By the way,
I guess I could. I mean, I guess I should be taking more Herbert based on.
I've been taking a lot
how
of Herbert.
I feel about this. Yeah,
I think he strikes me as the least likely guy to get excised. So I'm just like, because he's been working on pass blocking. He's like this whole narrative of like how hard he's been working on his pass blocking, and so who knows if that'll actually come to fruition. But he may have 2 outs to playing time even in a committee. But I mean, the thing is, the Bears are going to run the ball a ton. We think all 3 of these guys might be good, and we're not sure how the touches are going to break out. This has generally been a very profitable spot, right? This is like if you had just taken both Cardinals back at a high clip when they had Edmonds and Connor, if you had just taken both Bills backs when it was like 2 years of like Devin Singletary and Zach Moss or whatever, and we're not sure who it is. Those types of situations have been pretty profitable, even if you were overweight the whole thing and had to eat it on some of those teams.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I do think it changes when you go from a 2-way ambiguous to a 3-way ambiguous. Point one. Point 2 is like Travis Homer exists still.
The data would totally bear that out.
He doesn't exist.
That 3-way ambiguous.
He doesn't exist. I think 1.75. I don't know. I mean, I guess
he exists from the standpoint of like I think he's a really good special teams player. That when he was healthy, when he was healthy last year in Seattle, he had like a role.
Yeah, although they're talking about playing DJ Dallas and Kenny McIntosh after drafting running backs in the second round in 2 consecutive years. So, take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, Pete Carroll's weird, but I'm just saying, like, he played when Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker were on an NFL team last year. He was on the field getting snaps. Like, I don't want to pretend he has 0% chance of, like, playing. So, I don't know.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't have 0% chance of playing. It's just that, like, he's not going to matter because he doesn't do anything on offense. He's just going to like eat some third down snaps. And yeah, it probably would come at the expense specifically of Roschon Johnson. So I want to have the least Roschon of all these guys take. I get it, but it's just like, he's not an actual impediment to a breakout rookie. So if I'm betting on Roschon to just be really good, which is so far consistent with what we're hearing, that they really like him, then I'm just think Travis Homer adds nothing to how I should evaluate, whether or not to draft Roschon.
I mean, you can argue I'm being overly precise with this, but again, and not to just use this as a crutch on players, but the redraft versus best ball thing, this is somewhere where I would be at cost on Roschon and redraft. I would be loading up 100%. In best ball, I am just a little bit more worried about the floor. And maybe that's overly precise in my ability to predict like these things. You can say that, but like the floor risk just seems like a 13th round pick that gives you zeros throughout the whole year. Like,
Yeah. What I would push back on in some ways is like he could give you zeros for 6-7 weeks and then come on. So we're not trying to when we talk about Travis Homer and who's going to be active and stuff, like, you know, it isn't like you have to get it right for every single week. Like you could be 100% correct that Travis Homer will be active at the expense of Roschon Johnson because of his special teams ability and ability to handle third down work. And then he pulls a hammy, or Foreman pulls a hammy, or Herbert pulls a hammy, and Roschon gets his chance, looks really good, and he only delivers for you down the stretch. But at this price, that's more than enough. Like you're super psyched. So in some ways, like I don't know if he's someone that makes more sense in manage, because he's probably going to be a dead roster spot in a lot of scenarios.
Yeah.
And then when he breaks out, it's off the waiver wire. So it's a late season rookie, you know, and we know rookies do this, right? Jack Miller's done research showing that rookie running backs, you know, really come on at the end of the year, rookie wide receivers as well. This isn't just a narrative. In best ball, you have to be price sensitive with these types of plays. If he was even an 11th round pick, I think I'd start to be a lot more nervous about making this type of argument for him. But like, you know, Tyler Algier, kind of similar to that, right? Like he didn't really do much until the end of the season. I mean, Algier really didn't do anything until like the very end, and then he comes on, he looks really good, and they lean on him for a few weeks, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, I hear your points. I think like ultimately we probably just disagree on to the likelihood of someone. I think maybe I'm more focused on the fact that he was a day 3 pick, and you guys are more focused on the fact that there's a lot of exciting things in his profile, which I agree with. Like the per touch efficiency for Roschon looks really good. I think I'm ultimately just going back to like day 3 pick. A lot of these guys do nothing, and I don't like the cost, but I totally hear you.
It feels a little week 1 to me is kind of my biggest thing. Like it's a little, yeah, no, it's a long season, you know, and it's an ambiguous backfield that we know is going to put up points. So.
Yeah.
The backfield will score points, right? We agree on that.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you looked at the Bears backfield last year, they probably would have been in the bottom 10 for running back scoring, right?
They had plenty of rushes.
Yeah.
Plenty of rushes, but
that's the thing.
0 receptions.
But that matters way less on underdog, right? On DraftKings, you're worried about it.
Yeah.
And we're not projecting these guys to be, you know, this is not like spending a 3rd round pick. Like it's like if we can get 12.5 points per game for a month out of Roschon, it's pretty good. Like a lot. I know there are 13th round guys we like, but most of our 13th round picks probably suck.
Yeah, dude, so many of our picks suck.
Yeah.
It's great. It's actually insane how many of our picks absolutely suck.
Yeah. That's what I kind of wanted to do, that as an exercise, just like go through whatever like the default draft board by ADP was last year and just like laugh at some of the picks, because so many, like it once you get to like the 10th round, it's just like 50% bust or like higher. Like it's crazy. And that's why, like with the guy like Roschon, you know, who I don't even like that much, but I'm just like, you often, when you look back on a fantasy draft, I've said this a million times, but you often like, you just go through the draft board and you like when you see old draft boards, you literally like look like, okay, who took Cooper Kupp in the 4th, 5th round of the 2020 draft? Like that's like the only right answer. There's so many guys who were like, yeah, they didn't ruin your season, but like they just didn't really matter. Like we forget like how many guys there are like that. And then there's obviously a ton of busts. Then there's a few guys who like they're league winners, right? And so that's how this season's going to go too, you know. And I don't want to just be like, I can't
really
take
this point. Is that most of our decisions don't actually matter. It's just did you specifically in these ranges, like rounds 1 through 5 or whatever, you need to avoid the guys who get hurt and who get zeros or whatever. You know, that's huge. Or just get beat out straight up by their counterparts, right? Like if you take a big stance on Josh Jacobs and he ends up playing but gets outscored by Ramondre by a bunch or whatever, like that's going to be an L. But rounds 10 through 18, it's really just like, did you get the right guy? And if you didn't get the right guy, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think Roschon's so interesting, and we've gone forever on him now, but I think he's really
It's an interesting topic. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think he is a strong candidate to be this year's Tyrion Davis Price, where he just like never really does anything. But also, like, if we were looking for a James Robinson, wouldn't he also be probably the strongest candidate to just come into an ambiguous backfield where we're not like overly excited about anyone? I mean, Khalil Herbert's the presumed starter, and he goes in the double-digit rounds. And, Davis has not taken any of them. Like, there's no real excitement around Khalil Herbert. There's no real belief that he can take over the backfield. I think even he is saying, I'm a committee back. So, like, if anyone is going to pull a Myles Gaskin, a James Robinson, Gaskin was a second-year player, but whatever, just come out of nowhere and take over a backfield right away. He does strike me as a pretty good candidate for that too. So wide range of outcomes. And I think there's some median outcomes where he is a solid committee back guy, or does the Algier thing where he isn't anything until he is. But man, I do see, maybe you think it's a lot thinner than I do, but I do see some upside, especially for as long as the Bears continue to talk really positively about him.
Yeah, no, I see the upside. I'm not denying that. I think, we probably just like disagree on the percentages of the downside and the upside case, but man, the Bears backfield is super interesting. I agree with that. Like, the thing that's tough too is that Foreman and Herbert are just both so proven as good NFL rushers, and maybe so proven is an exaggeration, but you look at the stats the last couple of years for them, and man, they're both very efficient runners, and that strikes me as the sort of profile of the guy that's going to score fantasy points in the Bears backfield. It's not going to be the pass catching back. It's going to be the super efficient runner. Hopefully the guy that gets the goal line work. Could be Roschon. He could be really good at that too, but there's a lot of guys there that have interesting profiles, and maybe the answer is overweight all three. That sounds like what you're doing, Pat. I've been more on Herbert and like a little bit shy of the guys behind him for the downside risk, but I see the case for it for sure.
If you've drafted like that year with the Jaguars, that was a humbling experience. If you go in and you draft, Devin Ezigbo, who I drafted that year, and you draft, God, I can't even remember the other guy's name. Do you remember, Davis?
There was another guy.
There was another dude who was presumed to be the guy. Maybe the chat can help me out. I cannot remember. Okay. I literally cannot remember his name.
Was it Google Wally? No.
Armstead. Raquel Armstead. Yeah, Raquel Armstead and Devin Ezigbo. I drafted both of those guys that year. I didn't have Robinson.
Raquel Armstead got like gnarly long COVID and was like hospitalized and almost died.
He never played in the NFL again, I don't think.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I've forgotten that.
You know who else was on that team? My favorite running back prospect of all time, Chris Thompson, was on that team.
Chris Thompson, he had some relevance there for a minute.
He had some juice. Chris Thompson.
Yeah.
He broke his leg.
Sean Siegel loved him.
Yeah, he broke his leg his last year at Florida State and never did the combine. But I wish casted on him for years. He played until he was 30. I loved that guy.
Well, anyway, like that backfield, and it was not a good team, but it produced a true league winner because it was just a guy who was free and got all the touches. And then we saw the year that Myles Gaskin came out of nowhere. I don't even remember who we were drafting, but Patrick Laird comes on with Davis and Pete and tells us to draft Myles Gaskin. And we're like, what do you know, Patrick? And we don't draft Myles Gaskin. And then he comes out. So I just like with these hyper ambiguous backfields, I'm just okay eating some of the.
Who was supposed to play ahead of?
It
wasn't
Matt
Chase
Breida.
Edmonds. Oh,
it was Matt Breida. It was Matt Breida. Yeah, we decided it was nuts. Matt Breida. Yeah, and Matt Breida was probably a pretty fair comparison to Khalil Herbert at that time. He had been, pretty efficient. Now he's changing teams, and he was less. But as far as efficiency goes, I mean, he was a committee back who was pretty efficient, mostly an early down guy, but pretty fast, pretty efficient, and all that. So anyway.
So you're saying the guy that nobody's drafting on the team might be the true league winner?
I'm saying.
Who would that be? Who would this be?
Yeah, it's Travis Homer. This is all leading to Travis Homer. No, but I don't know. I've been kind of humbled by these like hyper ambiguous backfields in the past, and I'm not going to try to figure it out like in a big way. I do have the most Herbert, I guess, so maybe I am being hypocritical in that way. But I want to be overweight all three backs because I think someone is going to matter here.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got the Travis Homer talk at the end. We might have to save Cole Beasley to the Giants for next week. At this
Imagine
point.
Cole Beasley beats out Paris Campbell, who's been steamed up to the 15th round for a roster spot.
I'm just glad Wan'Dale Robinson goes in the 200s now because that he was going.
I am too.
He was going on the 160s.
It means I can keep taking him.
Oh, come on, man.
Wan'Dale Robinson is like the most polarizing player. Like, I think Jacob Sanderson hates him, I think. And then like Sean Siegel thinks he's like clearly the Giants' best wide receiver, which I don't agree with.
He is the best wide receiver.
Yeah. He's the best at running I feel like screens. I'm taking crazy pills. I didn't take any Wan'Dale before, and now I take him happily now.
People just have disregarded his dog levels. Like if you were not a dog level drafter, then you're not going to get it. You know, it is what it is.
I have 7.7 Wan'Dale, and I feel like I'm just like sitting on this. I'm completely neutral here. Is there's like a true Wan'Dale Robinson battle in terms of how good he is. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean. All I'm saying, for the people who love Wan'Dale Robinson, go watch his 100-yard game last year. I think it was against the Lions, and tell me if you think he was running like.
Why do I have to watch him? Set it to sad music and put it on Twitter, please. Do the reverse Ian Harditz.
I could do that, but anyways, let's wrap up here. Does anyone have a best value take as I scroll through ADP?
I do.
Come up with one myself. Okay. What you got?
So this is a player that I've been trying to get more of anyway, but I think will rise now because of this Toney stuff. I'm going to go Rashee Rice.
Damn it!
I think you probably duped me on that one. I bet I have a Rashee Rice in there. Okay,
I might have the better ADP though because he seems to have fallen a bit.
Is James Cook cheating? Are we saying that's cheating? I mean, you guys got a rule. Because I got to back up.
Wait, why would it be cheating?
Because
Hines just got hurt.
Oh
no, that's not
cheating. That's not cheating.
James Cook.
Okay.
I think it'd be cheating if like Harris.
Sure.
Went down.
The Hines thing we should touch on quickly. It sounds like a really sad injury for him because he got hit by someone else while he was on a jet ski.
So
Dude,
brutal.
That's brutal.
I did the math very quickly, which is basically just what we just spent 30 minutes talking about with Greg Dortch, which is that Hines was the primary punt and kick returner. So it really actually don't think is going to impact running back all that much because I think it'll just be Latavius, Damian Harris, and Cook. But it's Hardy, Sherfield. Who's the other guy? There's one.
Shakir.
No. Justin Shorter now might make the roster. Because I think Shakir was always going to make it. But sure, I mean, if they decide to let Shakir do punts or whatever, that's probably huge for him.
Well, Hardy's your kick returner, right? I mean, isn't that something he's done for a while? And he's good at it.
I believe so.
He's super fast.
Yeah. They also, not to be the guy who just keeps setting contracts, but he got $5 million guaranteed. So I don't think he was ever a cut risk, but this just seems like 100% lock. He's got to be active now for the returning stuff.
Maybe Shakir was more at risk than I thought, but that risk is totally alleviated now, I would say.
Got it. Okay, for mine, I'll go with Devante Parker. I should have taken it a couple weeks ago, but
yeah, dude, you've been
you left some serious rising value on the table here.
I left an
18th round pick.
Yeah.
You think he's going to continue rising?
I think he's going to continue rising.
All right.
He'll flip.
I actually take him still at this price. Honestly,
I take him.
Yeah, man. Why should Tim Patrick be going 20 picks ahead of him? Like
people love Tim Patrick.
I mean, Tim Patrick might be the leading receiver for the Broncos.
Tim Patrick is like he's just one of those guys. Like the FFPC crowd loves him. Like he was like happily taken as like a 9th round pick before he got hurt. Like I think he's going to keep rising.
It's like if you want the archetype of like pretty bad big X wide receiver who just runs routes, you got to pay like 150s for MVS. I get it, he's on the Chiefs. You got to pay 155 for DJ Chark. You got to pay 160 for DPJ, and you can get Devante Parker at 190 still. And I don't know, man. He played like it's still like not a cool or fun take, but he played like 90% of the snaps, 90% route rates in all the games he played last year, besides the ones he got injured or was returning from injury. And they just paid him a lot of guaranteed money. Like they're planning on that changing. I don't know. I also just think it's back to the Patriots are way too cheap point. And I think you can get the Mac Jones, Devante Parker stack. If you already took Ramondre or you already took somebody, Diggs earlier, you can get that so cheap. So it's picking up pennies in my opinion to get Devante Parker.
He also fits stuff like, cause I've taken a fair amount of Robert Woods and Darius Slayton. Because those guys just kind of help me the early season, and I tend to draft a lot of rookies. So I kind of like that archetype is like, just get me there, just help me get this team through. And Parker fits that very well. So I can't knock it. I hope he doesn't rise anymore because I like having that as like a little backup plan if I'm overly rookie heavy. But like as I don't know. Like where would you lose interest if he rose to?
I'd probably lose interest. Like I'd probably click Hodgins over him.
Me too.
170. Once you get to like Shaheed and Mims, I like sort of the upside of those guys more. But yeah, if he was like 160, I think there's still some like I have Diggs and I'm breaking tiebreakers between Devante Parker and like DPJ at pick 160. I'd break ties towards the correlation and take him. So for me, he could rise all the way to there. I'm probably losing this one just because he's such a boring name and has the injury prone label and everything. Like I don't think he's going to get seen, but people hate Devante Parker so much. So I think we're safe taking him in the 180s. So maybe I just talked myself into making a terrible selection in this game.
Well, it could be, sometimes this is tough because we take guys we just think are good picks. Yeah. As opposed to actual closing line value risers.
Yeah. But
hey, I picked Kyron Williams 1 week, so you'll never have a pick worse than that.
There's some bad ones on this list. Will Levis is on this list.
Man.
From
who picked that? Was that me?
No, that was me. That was me.
Oh, thank God. that seems like something I could have done.
Yeah. That one's not going to work out.
How many times have I picked Tutu?
You've got Tutu on here at least once. You've got Dortch on here. You've got Baker on here.
Davis has a Rolodex of guys who's already picked.
I just have a Rolodex of 18th round guys I think can end up being 16th round picks.
Yeah. Those are the big wins that we go for in fantasy football.
Gotta get those.
All right, we got to get out of here. This was too much time spent talking about punt returns.
Yeah, way too much.
You just got to get inside the mind of an NFL head coach if you want to win, apparently.
Yeah.
There's worse ways to play.
All right, guys. That was fun. Davis, Pat, anything you guys got coming up, or should we get out of here?
Pigcast, Sports Grid Fantasy Football Podcast. Watch Sports Grid TV, all the good stuff.
Legendary Upside. Sign up for a yearly subscription. You can still get a $50 underdog credit. I have a few of those left. Rankings, content, all the good stuff.
All right, and we'll be back next week with the late round QB on ADP chasing, so that should be a fun one. See you guys later.